One of the things that you talked about that I found particularly powerful is you compared the family to one of the pillars of our society. And effectively, what we're doing by turning our back on the family is destabilizing the pillar of our society.
Well, sure. And again, this is all social science that people don't want to talk about, but kids who have the best outcomes in school, et cetera, the least truancy, the least criminal behavior, are basically coming out of intact homes, and that holds across the socioeconomic spectrum. Again, it is hard to talk about this at a time when so many people don't have access to that very model. But that doesn't make it any less true.
Yeah, well, that's a difficulty. And I'm still, when I asked you about why people don't have this conversation or are scared to, I'm somewhat dissatisfied with your answer. And it's nothing personal to you. I just don't understand why we can't say, well, if you do this, it's less good than doing something else, without, still respecting people because they are in the position that they are. So if you're a single mother, we can say, well, it's not ideal for your child, but you are doing your best. And we still respect you for that. It's just maybe, it might be worth you teaching your child that actually it would be great for them to stay together with their partner and have children like that. Like, I don't see how those two things are mutually exclusive. Why is this even a political issue? I really don't understand.
Well, we live in a politicized time. That's one reason it's a political issue. But I would like to make it a political issue in a positive sense and say, maybe we can experiment politically. I'm not a policy wonk, but it does seem to make sense that there might be policies that would make it easier for parents to stay together, that would make it easier for parents to have another child. There could be tax breaks that way. There could be certain things about family formation that you could tether to forgiving student loans. I mean, there's a lot of room for creativity in this. And I think that seeing the government do some of that might help us down the road, might make it easier to start and keep a family in the first place. So we should look at that.
I agree. I think it is something that we need to look at.
When are you proposing, mate?
We're
skipping over that one.
Yeah, we're skipping over that. There we go. I guess what I'm worried about, Mary, is that I think as a society, I think we're so wrapped up in consumerism. I think we're so wrapped up in the glorification of the self and tied up with identity politics that the idea of, putting others' needs first before your own, I think is seen as a bit old hat and old-fashioned, is it not?
Well, it is, but that doesn't make it any less heroic. I mean, there are things about people that don't change. If we look at the serious concern over climate change, for example, and the way in which people make sacrifices in the name of that, right? Turning off their air conditioning, not going on airplanes, etc. In extreme cases, there are people who argue one shouldn't even have children because of climate change. But what that example goes to show is that we have a sacrificial side to ourselves. And it's just been displaced onto these more abstract ventures. It's not impossible to think that we can turn that back to its natural position, which is sacrificing in marriage, sacrificing by having a family, etc.
We should make it cool to post pictures of yourself being married on Instagram. I think that's the way you solve it. Well, it's interesting because, Francis obviously brings in the voice of pessimism, but I get the sense from you that you are, well, the way I would interpret it is you think things have got so bad that we can only go up from here.
Yeah, there was a novel in the 70s with that very title, Been Down So Long It Looks Like Up to Me. I don't know whether you've heard of it, but that's the idea. I mean, the bottom line is that we are living in ways unnatural to the kind of creatures that we are. And we need to recognize that, just as we can recognize in other creatures, in fellow creatures, when they are living in ways out of keeping with their natures. That's what I'm trying to do in my work, is shine a light on that. I'm a conservative precisely because I don't think we've been very good at coming up with new answers to ancient questions like, who am I? My hope is that we can also dig into the past and recover some of that wisdom and bring it to bear on these very new problems that we have, like psychiatric dissolution among the young.
And you talk about ancient ancient questions. Isn't the problem as well for men is it's not that they're obsolete, it's just that their position in society isn't as clear cut as it used to be. And as a result, has that not created a kind of crisis within men as well?
Yes, very much so, I think. And deriding the masculine principle, as happens in everyday discourse in all of the mainstream media, is not going to help that. Again, if you think of the plight of a young boy growing up today, about half of them in the United States are being raised in families without the father present, typically after some cataclysmic happening like divorce, meaning that the message a lot of them are getting are men are bad, right? And that can't help but confuse a boy and be a toxic factor in his life. So if we can't have real fathers, we can have substitute fathers. I wouldn't be surprised to see religion reemerging in a surprising way in this kind of wreckage. Now, as far as the Catholic Church has a impressive history of own goals.
Put very mildly there, Mary. Well done.
But, it offers at its best a paternal principle that people can understand, and it offers, for example, the figure of Saint Joseph as a substitute father. So there's still a language there that broken people of our time can work with, and I wouldn't be surprised to see, again, unexpected but real religious revival coming out of this, because that's at least more tangible. That gives you more to hold on to than a glitter family or a chosen family, or in the long run, identity politics.
And do you think that would be a force for good, this reinvention, and the reawakening of religion?
I think anything that gives atomized, purposeless people a source of positive meaning is good right now. We need that. We could use a lot more of that. It's interesting when I talk about how the identity politics are related to the sexual revolution. There is a particular document that I would like to point to here, which is the first document in which the phrase identity politics was used. It was done in 1977 by a group of radical African-American feminists. It's called the Combahee River Collective. And in this statement, which is a very sad statement, these women say, we are giving up on the people around us, especially the men around us. We don't think they have our backs. We don't think we can work with them anymore. We can only work with people exactly like we are. That's the founding statement of identity politics. It appears in 1977, just as the sexual revolution is taking hold. And I think it's incredibly evocative, because it shows that identity politics is born not out of liberation, but out of desperation to find people and create a community in a world where communities were already weakening. So that is something that we should all think about. When we think about identity politics, think about that document and think of it as a statement of resignation a statement about giving up on most of the rest of the human race. That's where identity politics is coming from.
Our former Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, said there's no such thing as society, there's only men, women, children, and families. And it goes back to what you're saying, which is, without families, we don't have a functioning society.
Pretty much that. And we're finding it out. The empirical evidence is all around us. We just need to acknowledge it and move on somehow, whether it's through politics or through personal behavior.